Hello, Fortune Seekers. On today's podcast, Danny and I are going to be getting into the story of the making of X, Seekers of Fortune. So if you like watching games, playing games, or making games, you're going to want to stick around. So, I'm your host, Joel Watts, and joining me today is the co-creator of X Seekers of Fortune and the co-founder of Mega Moth Studios, my creative partner, Daniel Ayub. Hey, Danny, how are you doing today?
Hey there, partner. I'm doing quite well today. Very excited to be on the phone with you today with my new improved energy.
Yes, we have been told to bring up the energy, so I'm reaching deep down inside of me and just pulling it up.
Dig within, brother, dig within!
Dig within. Yes, we must. That's the name of one of the abilities in our game. But we're going to be getting more into that, dig within, and the other abilities. But first, I got the question of the week for you, Danny.
Ooh, I like questions. I like weeks. Go for it.
All right, Danny. So I figure this one will endear us at least to our core demographic, which is millennials. If you were a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, which of the 4 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles would you be?
Why is this the question I've been waiting to be asked all my life? Why is this the question I've been waiting to be asked all my life? Ooh, good one. Let's see. Okay, this is kind of easy. I would say I identify with Donatello.
And Danny, I prepped you on this question. I told you not to tell me. And at the moment that I prepped you on the question, I said I am going to write down which Ninja Turtle I thought you were. You can see I've done no writing. And Danny says Donatello. For the other camera, I don't know if you can see that other camera. Danny says Donatello. I knew it. I knew my friend very well, and I knew he was a Donatello guy, which is appropriate because while I'd like to believe I'm a Leonardo, there is definitely a Michelangelo waiting inside of me. I'm a little too loosey-goosey to be a full-blown Leonardo, and I do enjoy a party. Now, I might be a Michelangelo who's getting a little older, and if it's too loud, turn it down. But that's definitely my Ninja Turtles, Michelangelo. So you identify with Donatello, what? Because he's a nerd?
I think he's just he's very much in his head. He approaches things from a heady standpoint, and I just relate to that. He was never the one who was the most flashy, but he was a contributor. He was a solid contributor, and I view myself very much the same way. As for my prediction of how you would answer that question, I didn't write it down, but I thought you would aspire to be a Leonardo. You're mostly a Michelangelo, but on a bad day, you're a Raphael.
So I just take up the other quadrants of the Ninja Turtle sphere.
Okay, but hold on. I have one more prediction, and you're going to have to confirm or deny it, and I don't want you to lie. This needs to be a very, very honest answer, okay?
Okay.
Did you or did you not have a bizarre infatuation? Did you not have a bizarre infatuation with Casey Jones?
A bizarre... I thought you were going to say April O'Neil, and I was going to be like, well, have you seen my girlfriend? Casey Jones, I respected Casey, but I never, thought of myself. If I ever put on a hockey mask, I was pretending to be Jason Voorhees, not Casey Jones. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, it's a little disappointing. For some reason, I got the vibe that Casey Jones would have been someone that you just really, really admired. I don't know why.
I think I admired him as a friend. I would rather watch, as an adult, the Raphael Casey Jones team-up movie over, just the Ninja Turtles by themselves. I'd like to see, the Raphael's Out for Revenge movie with Casey Jones, and they're, going, they're all no holds barred, they're getting bloody kind of movie.
Okay.
All right, Danny. So, great talk about the Ninja Turtles, but let's go ahead and jump into today's topic. And we want to start this podcast off right by laying the foundation and the groundwork for all topics we're going to be covering in the future. And to do that, we think it's pertinent that we express and tell the story of the making of X, Seekers of Fortune, from its inception up until the point that we got up to last week, which was our debut at Comicpalooza. Today, we're not going to be going all the way there, but we are going to start with the inception of the story all the way up until we first started playtesting it for our friends. So, Danny, let's go ahead and start at the very beginning, which is I woke up one day to find a text message from you saying, "Hey, buddy, I got a game idea. Why don't you give me a call so we can talk about it?" And I will say that I've woken up to those sorts of texts a lot, but they usually have something to do with a short or a feature film because we come from a filmmaking background. We're always trying to think of a really clever story to tell, something that's worth spending a few years of our lives and a few $1 million to, work on. A game, though, that was a little interesting to me. I know you had the idea of designing a game. You had always shown interest in designing games before, but you had never actually come to me with a game idea. So why don't you tell me how this game idea came to you and, what was the very basics that you came to me on that call with?
Yeah, so I mean, this whole game came to me just one night while I was laying in bed, putting my youngest son to sleep. He was tossing and turning as 4-year-olds like to do, and I just got my mind a-drifting, and I started thinking about what kind of game, if I could create a game, what kind of game would I want to make? And, it's no secret, I love Magic, and, I've always wanted to share Magic with more people. So I started thinking about a game that maybe would be Magic-like, but more accessible to more people. And so I feverishly constructed a text message to you and kind of outlined the basics of a game that I called Lost Arts, in which mages aspiring mages living in a world where magic no longer was accessible, sought lost relics and runes to uncover this knowledge of the past that was gone. And so I think I devised a system of what we now think of as leads, used to be called runes. These were resource cards paired with quests, which were actually, I think they were actually spells, maybe even in that very first message. And you had to find the right runes to cast a spell, and the first person to cast 5 spells won the game.
Yes.
And I think there was also the idea of these bounty cards, right? This idea that you casted a spell and you got an effect as a result. And I think that was more or less, the contents of the message. Do you remember that differently, or?
I think some of those concepts might have come down the line a little bit later, but I mean, they were definitely in our initial conversations. What I remember was, though, the idea of you matching runes together in order to cast spells, and the first person to cast 5 spells wins. That was definitely there in the core of that first message, because I do remember this debate I had in my head of how many decks does this game have to be, because at the time I was blushing at the idea of it being 3 different decks, and I know that came early. Now, if I remember correctly, you sent me a design document. I forget if you had written it that night or if we had a conversation and then you sat down to hash it out to give us something more to talk about. But all I remember is that you actually went out of your way to find special characters to create the runes. I remember that striking me. In fact, that might have been like one of those things that I was able to bite into, early on, because it was as though you had written it in a foreign language. I think you actually didn't you?
Yeah, actually, I just flipped my keyboard over to Sanskrit and just chose the coolest looking Sanskrit characters. So.
But I do recall, so we had that initial conversation, and to give a little bit of my background here and maybe why you came to me. A few years over the past, I would say it's going on a decade, I had an on-again, off-again relationship with a game called Cuddle. And this is an nearly ancient, from the 1970s, card game that was played with a regular deck of cards. But if you look at the rules, and someday we're going to have a Cuddle episode where I just explain Cuddle to you, and you maybe sit there with a slack jaw. But the way that Cuddle works is you play it with a regular set of cards, but each number card and each face card has a special ability, and these special abilities can do things like clear the board, or like stop your opponent's special ability from going off, to protecting the other cards. So when I saw this, I think I saw it on some maybe Magic the Gathering subreddit is where I first got clued into it, and I looked further into it, and I had to, if I ever get a chance to meet Richard Garfield, which I'm planning on at this point in my life, I am going to ask him off the record, were you inspired by Cuddle? Was Cuddle the origin of Magic the Gathering when you started developing it?
Absolutely. I was aware of your interest in designing games and the work you had done on Cuddle. You had kind of talked to me about it over the years. And as I got interested in exploring the idea of game design, I always knew when I had an idea that I thought was good enough, you would be the person I brought it to, because I knew that this was something that might have an overlap of interest between us.
Yeah, so, well, let's get into the hard work and like those initial steps that we took that if you're watching this at home, you might want to follow along with these steps, because they, fortunately for us, were the most productive steps that we could have taken in order to get to where we're at.
So, to recap, we had the runes, which, today we call leads, and we had quests, which today we call adventures, and the earliest version of what we now call Action X cards used to be called bounty cards. And the bounty cards were made up of 2 card types, not the 3 that we know today as feats, relics, and sites. In the original game of Lost Arts, we had bounties with 2 types, and those were boons instead of feats and relics instead of relics and sites. And the idea was, hey, okay, let's figure this out. We need 10 of them to test the first prototype. Why don't we each make 5 cards and figure out, what we've got in front of us at that point, and tell me, Joel, if you feel differently. But I was like, okay, I can come up with 5 cards. I don't know how much design space there is in this game, but yeah, let's see what we can come up with and throw them together and see if we at least have a working prototype that we can iterate off of.
Yeah, you that felt like the first piece of homework. I mentioned those other things that we solved for, but it felt like I was just, you had already come up with the idea and all I had to do was actualize it, which didn't feel like homework. But you telling me, hey, Joel, come up with 5 of these spell-like cards and, I'll do 5 as well. And that was the first time I felt like, okay, all right, I got to get this done, and this is early on in the process. At this point, I try to do at least one thing a day for the game. But back then, it's like, oh, I got to go to work and do laundry and, have a date with my girlfriend. When am I going to find time for this? And I think one of the first, this is actually going to work is when I sat down, and I kind of dreaded this assignment, because I'll confess to the audience, I have toyed around with game design and iterated on Cuddle. I was never much of a Magic card designer. Like a lot of people, when they get introduced to Magic, they instantly, their creative side goes off and they want to design a Magic card. And I think I always have felt like I wanted to design Magic, not the Magic cards themselves, which it sounds silly, but the backbone of the game, like what you came up with, the mana system of Magic, that's what interested me. So when I actually had to sit down and make these cards, I was at first kind of scared, because I just did not know, like you have to create something out of nothing. But I think it only took me 20 minutes to write out 5 or 6 rough ideas for cards that we then implemented into the game.
Yes, 5 or 6 extremely broken cards.
Yeah. I will say, I think if there was a scoreboard, I'm the one with the most broken cards on the scoreboard so far.
Yeah, I would say like most every card that's extremely broken started with you, and then we've tuned them all, at least to where like a lot of them are powerful, but I don't know that there's anything I would straight up call broken anymore.
Yeah, and I think we're going to have a future episode where we go over those initial, early card designs and kind of like trace them through the iterations that we made to them. That's already going to be an episode. But yeah, I do recall Workers' Tools. There were we'll get into it here in a bit, but there were cards that I wrote that after the first play session, we were like, well, that should just be the rule. That should just be how the game works. But we'll get into that here in a moment. Let's talk, though, now about solving probably the biggest problem we have. Danny, you live in Houston.
Yeah.
And I live in Austin. Yeah. Now, those are 2.5 hours away from each other, and that's not insurmountable, but to play the game frequently, we knew that we couldn't we had to figure out a digital solution for the game. And we went to the internet and pretty quickly found a website called Tabletopia.
Tabletopia, I mean, this was huge. When we sat down and we started talking about playing this game, actually trying to make this game, one of the things that, to your point, that we came up against right away is how the heck are we ever going to play test this? We're not going to travel back and forth. The game's never going to get made. We have to find a way to test it online. And you found Tabletopia, and you put in the work, and you built the demo very, very quick, the prototype very, very quick. And then there we were, playing the game. And I remember the first time we sat down to play the very first game, I think we were both holding our breath and saying, is this a game, or is this just a bunch of cards that we're going to be like, oh, okay, well, none of this stuff goes together. And then we played our first game.
Yeah. And that was, I mean, I'm not going to lie and say we knew instantly that we had the thing. We didn't have that for months, that feeling that, oh, we got something special here. But what we did know is that we kicked the tires and we got in the car and drove it down the road. And you know what? It didn't blow up.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Joel, because, if you're a game designer right now and you're listening to this podcast and you have an idea for a game, and you look at X Seekers of Fortune and you say, hey, I think that was a pretty good game. I want to make a game that I think is really good. And you start making your first prototype and it doesn't play like, X Seekers of Fortune or something. Just know X Seekers of Fortune in the beginning did not play anything like X Seekers of Fortune. We spent a lot of time iterating on the game saying, is this game ever going to be good? At the initial prototype step, which I think this is what you were saying, Joel, is we played it and we said, it's functional. This is a functional game. Is it fun? Kind of. It's not fun, but it's missing a lot of things to really be fun and interesting and worth playing a bunch. And, for me, one of my goals from the very beginning was to make a game worthy of competitive play, and it was nowhere near that. But we knew we had a framework to iterate on. And we knew, I think, that we needed more feedback to figure out what the next steps were.
Yeah, and we're going to get that here in a second on our road to Damascus, if you will, here. But I just wanted to say, if you're a game maker watching us right now, and you're wondering, when will my game feel like I should actually put money into this? Because that is a huge breaking factor of like changing it from something fun you're doing in a creative project to being actually like livelihood changing. And it could change your livelihood in two directions. And so there's a factor that Danny, you had coined. I think you said a sticky factor, the factor of like, this game is fun enough where I want to keep coming back and playing it, or there's an audience out there who keeps wanting to come back and play it. And just know, teaser / spoiler, we're probably not going to say that the game has accomplished its sticky factor until like the third part of this series. So just keep that in mind as we're going on. We're still not making a game that we can earnestly say that we personally love yet. This is still very much in the baking in the oven, and that's what I think what we're getting to is we have this game. I think we did a few other iterative changes to it, and it's going to be hard since we didn't like take the most thorough notes and record every conversation along the way. I can't remember all the little details between our first play test and when we showed it to other people, but I do know that we did design more of the bounty / spell cards, and tuned up a couple of things and changed some of the core rules of how the game played. But we did know in those first few weeks of doing all this work that we needed to get outside people to tell us what they thought of the game, because we thought we thought we had something, but we didn't know one way or the other what we had.
Yeah, I think when you're at that point, where it's early on, it's your first game that you're building whole cloth, you say to yourself, okay, this sort of works, but would anyone else think that, or is this just me deluding myself into thinking that I've got the beginning of something here? And that's when, to what you just said, so that's when we said, okay, Time to go external and see what other people think of this for the first time.
Yeah, exactly. So we reached out to two folks who hopefully we'll be able to talk more about, or speak more to later. But one of the people that we reached out to was our old Magic the Gathering buddy, Patrick Mankins, who we go back over a decade, I believe, back to when all three of us were working at the same job at Central Market Cafe here in Austin, Texas.
Yep.
So we brought him in, and we brought my brother Nathan in. And Nathan, I passed the magic disease on to him pretty early. But we got both of those two together to agree to a Saturday afternoon play test. And all of us got on the horn with each other, and we just let them at it. And how do you think, do you remember how they reacted and some of the things we learned along the way from listening to their feedback and watching them play the game?
Yeah, no, I mean, that first play test was super instructive. And the thing that to me really stood out was like, it was clear that like they seemed like they were playing a real game. And that was the big question we had for them was, does this feel like a game? Or does it feel like, we're asking you to do a bunch of disjointed actions? And they both agreed, no, this feels like a game and it's kind of fun. But the biggest thing is it feels like it's on rails. It feels like you're kind of playing solitaire together and just kind of, seeing who wins that solitaire first. The game's biggest problem at that stage was that it was lacking player agency. And the second note that they had was, really to deal with completing quests. At that time, we still had 3-cost, 4-cost, and 5-cost quests. And our idea was, okay, 5s are the most common, but you get a 4 and you're excited, and a 3 you're excited just because they're easier to solve. But no matter what, you're always drawing the same amount of cards. I think they all drew you 2 leads and an Action X card, or at that time, a bounty card. And obviously they were not leads at that time. They were runes. It took me forever to start saying leads and Action X cards, and now it's hard for me to stop saying it. But they said, hey, these are not all equally easy to do. You should scale the rewards. And looking back at it now in retrospect, it's kind of like a big duh. Like, yeah, of course, like there should be better rewards for harder things. But at the time, we weren't thinking about it from that perspective. And Patrick and Nathan brought that to us, and I think we agreed to implement it about 5 seconds after the call ended. We did our postmortem, and we said, "What about that scaling idea? That's a green light, right? Yeah. That's a green light. We're definitely doing that." But the player agency question, that was really, really the big takeaway. That's what we knew we needed to solve to make anything that approached the game that we knew we wanted to make.
They really quickly identified those as being maybe the weakest points of the game. And to go back to the scaling of the rewards for completing adventures or quests, those two words are so similar that we could have probably just interchanged them. But, we got to be specific. They were quests at the time. I will say that we came up with such a good solution for the quest rewards that I'm almost worried that there's an even better solution that we're afraid to touch because we have such a good solution in front of us. And you know what they say, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Is that what they say?
I think something to that extent. Like don't let good be the enemy of great or something like that. Again, this is not something that I know what you're saying. I don't remember word for
Well, let's move off of that, but let's just say that we came quickly up with a solution that worked so well that we almost haven't, it kind of comes across as like the whims, like the support beam that we question if we should even touch because it's doing its job well, and if we touch it, it could actually make everything above it fall down.
But, when things work well enough, sometimes you stop looking when maybe if you looked a little farther, there's a better solution. This is one area where that might be true of this game.
Mm-hmm. But the fact that we came up with something so quick that works so well, it shows that it probably is at least on the road to the right balance. But essentially we decided 3-cost quest would get you no runes and 1 Action X card. 4-cost quests would get you 1 rune and 1 Action X card, and the 5 costs, since they're so hard to complete, are actually going to be the most beneficial, where they would get you three runes or leads and an action X card. So that was like the solution. We can't. I don't. Who knows whose mouth it came out of? It just seemed like it worked. And we implemented it, and within the next few play tests, it just seemed like it was always meant to be. But the player agency, now that's going to be a tale that is going to carry us through the next episode, because slowly and surely over the matter of months, we identified places where the game felt weak or felt like it was lacking fun. And that's when we started implementing the player agency, because specifically I believe it was Patrick who suggested that the game, right as it was when we presented it to him, felt like a ride, like a roller coaster. Yeah. You didn't have control over what the game was. You were just along for the ride. Whatever came into your hand was what you could do, and you did it. There was almost no strategy. And so we made changes along the way to where I would argue that there is so many decision points to make in our game that it can feel sometimes overwhelming. Well, it can sometimes feel like you don't know when you made the misplay that cost you the game. Going over your plays in the game and what you could have done at any given turn and what you did do there's so many fracturing points now of decision making that for somebody to really narrow it in as to the one mistake they made that cost them the game, or the one great play they made that won them the game, that in of itself is a feat.
Absolutely. I mean, the game right now has enough decision points where, you get to the end of the game and you say, okay, I lost that game. Was it because I shouldn't have broke through there? Is it because I shouldn't have infiltrated there? Maybe I should have infiltrated. Was I supposed to thwart that? Should I have held that feat a little bit longer? Did I choose the right mode for that relic? There's all kinds of things that you're saying to yourself at the end of the game. And for me, that's what I love in games. I want to be able to lose and analyze my gameplay and say, okay, can I pick up some percentage points by rationalizing my strategy a little bit better in the future? I love talking to, my opponent that I'm playing with, and, especially if I respect them, and just say, hey, when I made this decision, do you think that was the wrong thing to do? And if so, why? Or if it was the right decision, why? Compare notes. And I love watching, different people play games and explain. I love watching different people play games and explaining why they make the decisions that they make. It's just very eye-opening to see how people perceive the problems in front of them and how they approach solving them.
Excellent. Well, Danny, was there any other ideas or thoughts that you had about like where we got to there, like after that first play test and the beginning of the heroic feat journey?
No, I think that pretty well encapsulates it. We're facing the player agency problem, and as you pointed out, in next week's story, we will delve into how we solve that problem.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Okay. Well, in that case, why don't we go ahead and move off of today's topic and go ahead and get into something a little random.
Yes, I'm excited for this. So, I have the distinct pleasure of putting together something random that you don't get to know about beforehand, and subjecting you to it.
Yes, you do. I have no idea why I agreed to this, but we just wanted to make sure the podcast was spicy. So go ahead, Mr. Chef. Why don't you go ahead and add that spice to our lives?
Absolutely. Very, very, very happy to do so. So for this week's Something Random, I'd like to play a little game of Would You Rather.
Oh, God.
My favorite game to play, and anyone who's known me for any period of time hates playing it with me.
Yes, I'm very scared right now.
Number one. So there's 3 of these. So
okay.
here's number one.
Phew. Well, yeah, three of them, but like how many sub questions are you going to ask per one? Is number one, part A, part B.
Well,
Go ahead.
okay, so here's how it will work. I'll read the basic premise with any sort of clarifying information that I think is germane at the beginning, and then
Yeah.
you can ask any questions you want, and I'll give you whatever answers I have. All
Okay.
right, number one. Would you rather be trapped in a pit of snakes with Indiana Jones and get bit by at least one snake, or be abducted and experimented on by aliens? Assume you survive both encounters and are equally maimed in a non-inconsequential way.
That's an interesting question because we have a couple of factors here. In one scenario, I get to meet Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. And the other scenario, we get to meet
And a cobra.
aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm not excited to meet the snakes. I'm just gonna throw that out there. That's not a bonus. But meeting aliens could be a bonus. I mean, as I'm not a ufologist myself, but I definitely am a big fan of the last podcast on the left, and I have at least a passing interest in aliens. So, okay, there's a factor here I have to acknowledge.
Okay.
Rarely do people get abducted by aliens and get to have a normal life afterwards.
Yes.
Assuming I get to come back and, it's like you can tell a story about your time with the snakes.
Yeah.
And that's just a story you tell. You tell a story about being abducted by aliens, and
Right.
that's the only story you get to tell for the rest of your life. I think that that's actually going to be the deciding factor, even though I would really love to know that we're not alone in this world and I'm okay being experimented on, because probing doesn't scare me, that much.
Right.
I wouldn't be looking forward to being probed, but I could deal with it. At the end of the day,
Okay.
I would rather be able to tell the snake story than have to live the rest of my life as the abductee.
Okay. So you would rather be maimed by snakes than by aliens? Is that?
I guess so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I
All
would
right.
rather be maimed by snakes than aliens. Plus, I would also enter a pantheon of humans who have a mortal enemy. The snake is one of the three mortal enemies of humans at a primal level, and I think I would be another link in the chain of our great rivalry with the snake.
Okay, number two. You ready for number
Okay.
two?
Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. Would you rather always have a piece of gum in your mouth, including during sleep and intimacy, or trip and fall at least 3 times? Or trip and fall at least 3 times a day, but you can assume you only break a bone once a year?
For a second, I thought that I had this one in the bag because I was about to answer gum, but then I remember that if I chew gum long enough, and especially right now, I'm actually in the braces gang right now, guys. Braces gang, what's up?
What's up?
But aside from the braces, having little wires that stick out and tear up the inside of my gums, the cheeks portion of my gums, even when I don't have those, if I chew gum long enough, I start to chafe the inside of my mouth, and so
Your mouth chafes?
The inside of my mouth. I think it might be the direction that my teeth are facing. I always say I have a bigger I have a weird bite for my mouth size, so I have to be very careful not to bite my tongue often, and the same with my gum. So basically, if I were to chew gum all the time and have to chew gum all the time, my mouth would be just open wounds and sores after a few weeks, and they would never get a chance to heal. And so while you think it might sound crazy, I'll take one broken bone a year that I can heal, and I assume often that's just going to be a finger or maybe a toe. And also if you fall 3 times a day for the rest of your life, you're going to get really good at falling, and you're going to be able to chaplain the hell out of that. I'm going to be just the funniest faller after 3 months of falling every day, 3 times a day.
You'll just be an expert faller? You're just going to be the best
yeah,
faller of all time?
I'll be, yes. If you fell 3 times a day, guaranteed, you're going to become an expert at it, especially if you're still young like me. I mean, yeah, in 20 years, that would be a death sentence. But I still have a chance, to make it look fun. And whether I fall in a way that is the least injury prone way of falling, or I go for it and put on a show for the people around me, it's still going to be I think, better for me overall. It'll be funner for me overall than having to always have gum in my mouth and have to think about how I have to deal with that and the chafing. So that's the answer to my question there.
I've never wanted to be the gypsy lady from Thinner more.
Faller.
I really wish I could grant that at this particular moment.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right, you ready for number 3, the last one?
Yes, I think so.
Would you rather have to eat the entire contents of an all-you-can-eat Chinese buffet, or be on Naked and Afraid without the possibility of leaving early with
my man, my brother, you could have said, you could have just been like, would you want to go out for drinks with or eat the entirety of a Chinese buffet? And I would have answered that I would eat the entirety of a Chinese buffet. And just for the record, I don't like half of what's on a Chinese buffet. It's not food that I particularly enjoy. There's half that I love and adore. That's why it's a buffet. You know, there's like, 1/3 of it or 1/4 of it is like top tier, S tier food. And then there's another 1/4 of it that is like, I can definitely fill my plate with that. And then there's another 1/4 that's like, maybe if I'm adventurous. And then one last 1/4 that's like never. And I would eat all of it. There's not this is not a never situation. I would eat all of it in order to avoid spending that extended period of time with. I wouldn't, like I said, I wouldn't necessarily even want to. I'm actually worried. If this gets posted, there's a chance he'll watch this.
Well, I'm sure he will, but I mean, what is that going to do? Increase the number of times he 3 or 4?
Yeah. Okay. Good point there.
Well, he is quite litigious.
Well, I wouldn't say he's frustrating. My girlfriend's quite litigious. I say this from the bottom of my heart. And I find your stories and your predicaments to be very entertaining. I am not going to just actively go out with you. It's too. The chances of me getting shot because I was with you are too high, I have to say. So just keep that in mind.
If
Danny
is watching, I hope he puts in the comments whether he would want to be on Naked and Afraid with you, or eat from the Chinese buffet. All of the contents of it.
I think he wouldn't want to do Naked and Afraid with me because it would be a little, it'd be crossing a boundary that he's a little uptight about. Let's just say that.
Gotcha.
If you gave me the option, now if the option was like get in a room naked with for 30 seconds and let him absorb my body and criticize me for it for the rest of my time with, I might have taken that.
Okay.
But it was but Naked and Afraid, like what are they together for like 3 weeks? And problem solving the entire time?
I mean, it's definitely like close to 2 weeks.
Okay.
And I don't think either of you would have particularly high survival ratings. So
where's the lie? You're not wrong.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. You've got that adventurer persona, but there might be some adventure skills that still need a little work.
Let's just face it. I'm a glamper at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
If I were, I would go out and do something fun as long as I knew I was coming home, go into a nice, cool and or warm place and getting some cocoa.
Yeah, cocoa. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what I got this week. I think I have to up my game next time we do this.
I'm glad you started with the kitty gloves this week because I know, I have a feeling if you could ask the right question, that could be like half of the podcast could just be me reasoning out a question. But those were all pretty cut and dry for me.
Yeah. I'll have to up it. Awesome. Okay. All right. Well, that's what I've got this week for our something random portion of the podcast. And
So I guess I should pick it up from here and say, Fortune Seekers, thank you so much for joining us for the X Seekers of Fortune official podcast. We'd like to invite you to join us on social media. On TikTok, we are Mega Moth Studios. On Instagram, we are at X_Seekers_of_Fortune. It should come up after like the first underscore. And then you can also sign up for our beta. We're going to be launching a closed beta through Tabletopia in the coming weeks. If you go to megamothstudios.com, there's going to be a tab up in the upper bar of the site for you to fill out a little form and get early access to play X Seekers of Fortune through the beta. Danny, is there anything else you wanted to add to that, or was that basically...
No, guys, please go to the website, sign up for the beta. Again, it's www.megamothstudios.com/join-the-beta. Or as Joel said, you can go to the website and look at the drop-down menu, and it's just join the beta. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know that you heard about it on the podcast. We'd love to know that someone out there is listening to this, other than... But hey, you got a t-shirt coming your way. Don't worry about it, buddy. You're definitely getting a t-shirt.
Hey, Danny, don't we have some upcoming events as well?
All right, guys. Yeah, absolutely. We've got some exciting events coming up. So first off, if you are in the Oklahoma City area, specifically, if you are in Norman, Oklahoma, on July 1st from 12 noon to 8 p.m., we will be hosting a early access pre-release demo at 405 Brewing. And you can learn more about that on our Linktree or on Facebook to sign up. There's an Eventbrite sign up for it. We'd love for you to come out, play. If you come out and you are a challenger, meaning that you do play the game with us, we will provide you with your first pour of beer free, courtesy of Mega Moth Studios, provided that you are 21 years or older and or you are in a position to drink responsibly. So... come out and see us. Again, that's July 1st from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. at 405 Brewing. And there's more information to be found on our Linktree on TikTok. You can find a link to the Eventbrite site and also via our Facebook, which is just X Seekers of Fortune. And then secondarily, we have a event coming up in the Houston area in Richmond, Texas at Uncanny Comics and Games. That is a very exciting event. We met Ender at Comic Palooza, and he asked us to come down and demo the game at his store, and we couldn't be more excited to take him up on that offer. So thank you, Ender. We're excited to come see you, and that is going to be on July 18th. That's a Tuesday at Uncanny Games and Comics in Richmond, Texas, and we are going to be there from noon to 8 p.m. as well. We'll be there all day. Come out at any point during the day, say hi, and hang out with us. We'd love to meet you. We'd love to talk about the game and what other games you love to play. You know, we just want to hang out with some cool people. So please come say hi. Again, that is July 18th. That's a Tuesday at Uncanny Comics and Games, or Games and Comics. I apologize if I got that order wrong.
Yes, thanks, Danny. And I am looking forward to all of those events coming up, especially the 405 Brewing, because I haven't had any of the 405 beers myself, and they sound delicious.
Oh, I'm so excited for 405 beer. I've seen so much of it on the internets, and they seem like a lot of fun. If I was in Norman, I'd be at 405 all the time. I think that should be the official hangout spot of Norman, Oklahoma. If their social media is any indication of how cool those guys are and gals, I would run, not walk, run to 405 Brewing today.
Excellent. Yeah, it's good. We're definitely going to find some treasure out there, and I hope you folks at home find some treasure of your own. See you next time, Treasure Seekers, for the making of X Seekers of Fortune Part 2, Heroic Feats.
Later, guys.
Bye.